Welcome, listeners, to the Traveler Chronicles, where the enchanting world of Extraeus comes to life. I'm Dungeon Master Eguile, your guide through the pivotal scenes in our thrilling Dungeons & Dragons Homebrew campaign. Join us as we embark on adventures with the Travelers, a diverse group of heroes, each with their own unique reason for traveling the world. Together we'll explore the rich lore and vibrant landscapes of Extraeus, filled with magic, mystery, and unforgettable moments. And don't miss out on our special segment, Traveler's Tidings with Luna, where reporter Luna, played by my wonderful wife, DNDWife, interviews intriguing characters from our world, bringing their stories to life in delightful, immersive conversations. Whether you're a seasoned dungeon master seeking inspiration or a newcomer eager to dive into a fantastical journey, the Traveler Chronicles has something for everyone. So grab your gear and prepare for adventure. The world of Extraeus awaits. Welcome back, adventurers, to another thrilling episode of the Traveler's Chronicles. Tonight's episode is one that I've personally been dying to share, unraveling the mystery behind Bricky's disappearance in Arinoka. Mm-hmm. The nice thing is that this story ties in so much to the Tournament of Strength, the dark schemes of Dr. Matthias, and the challenges of players missing at the table.
That's right. This episode gives you a behind-the-scenes look at our Homebrew campaign. We'll share Bricky's secret side quest, hear an exclusive in-character interview with him post-disappearance, and break down how his subplot impacted the campaign. Trust us, you don't want to miss this.
Yeah, I think, and that's what I've been kind of dying to share, is because this is kind of, I believe, even with currently as of recording this, kind of, I think, one of our only misses where a character couldn't show up and we add the session still. We have a personal table rule that, unless it's kind of voted on, if only one person misses, we tend to still have the session with a 6-player table. It's kind of rough to say, all right, reschedule for
no
one.
D&D for all 6 of you.
And the players tend to know that I'm one where I like to allow them to have opportunities to do other kind of crazy stuff. That yes, their character may not actually be there, but they actually are still allowed to participate, though they're not there really. But it also can come with some negative consequences, which is always kind of my thing, is that you don't really get anything for free.
Right. You do have to work for some of it.
But really, I have kind of an interesting philosophy when it comes to, players, absences, is that, it shouldn't be something frowned upon.
Yeah.
I always push the philosophy. Life happens, stuff like that. So, it really is something that happens. And so you shouldn't necessarily plan for it to never happen. You should always plan for it to happen.
Yeah.
And so I've always been like, okay, you can always weave, depending on how you play your story, the player's absence into it. Now, obviously, it's tough in certain situations, but with the way we play, where every session is essentially a day in the world, so that way, every time we end, it's the end of the subsequent day, so it kind of helps give a good stopping point for the story.
Really nice. We know we fell asleep the last time.
Not always, but at least it's been a day.
About to fall asleep.
It's just, the biggest thing is that it's just been a day. It's been 24 hours essentially for each session. So, instead of it being like, oh man, these characters could go for, one session is a 3 weeks or 3 months. And if you're missing that, you're like, holy crap, how did I miss 3 months of story?
Right.
And I was only gone for 6 hours. So for ours, we really, create it. But for me, I always look at them as really big opportunities mostly for putting out the characters' individual backstories, because I think they're already kind of missing, so it kind of gives them like that semi spotlight. So it's like, okay, you can now you can put maybe a little bit of the breadcrumbs of their backstory, or a little bit more of an opportunity for that when they come back, they can have the spotlight for a moment, because obviously everyone's going to be like, oh hey, you were actually gone, you weren't just this zombie standing that was just kind of haphazardly answering and swinging their sword when they need to. The character is actually missing from the story,
and we need to find out why. I think that's a big driving factor in the story. It creates a good beat especially an introductory story. I think.
And so we used to have an older system that I called the Jaeger system, and it worked. And what that was a player, if they were going to miss a session, could assign 2 players to operate their character, like in the Pacific Rim series. And this was like a checks and balance system, so then they know someone wouldn't just rob their character character blind, or
they also couldn't make trades.
Yeah, couldn't make trades, couldn't take things from each other, and it allowed like a semblance of balance. But then again, it's still kind of like two people trying to play some character they don't really know.
Yeah.
And then if they didn't get all the information, a lot of times it's like, oh, well, we don't really know what their items do because we don't have their player sheet. Like, I know they're good at this. Like, maybe it's +6. I don't know. And so then it became a problem. So it was just better to do this kind of idea of, you can do absence. You can let the character leave. They can be captured. They can be kidnapped. Time. But what we do is, you can do things like side sessions. And early in our like second campaign and some of the first campaign, I would do like text side like missions. And so if someone was gone, I would text them scenarios and kind of like a little like Zork, adventure by text. And that would give them a little bit of opportunity, one, to kind of know where they are in the story, and two, kind of get back into the sessions so they don't quite feel like they're missing and they have maybe some information to gain. Because there's nothing worse, I think, at least as my perspective for it, I've only been like a player twice. In that, like, that idea of like, okay, you came back and you have like really nothing to offer at that point, right? You're like, I just need everyone to now tell me what happened, and you have no information. I feel like that's like the worst. Your absence feels even worse on you because now you're like, okay, I'm gonna have to be babysat for this session that I waited another 6 weeks for. And I don't even know what's going on, so I'm trying to catch up, but obviously things are happening. But if you're coming in and you're like, oh, wait, while my character was gone, I actually got this key that'll get through something that I got, and I talked to this person, and they're like, oh, shit, that's the guy we were trying to find.
Right.
And now we skip the little section where I'm like, oh, crap, they don't need to talk about that. Cut.
Yeah.
And now the person who's missing has now taken point and is leading them where I want them to go.
Yeah, and like you said, now they get a little bit of the spotlight. It can reveal some things about the character that we might have wanted.
There's a lot of times that it actually becomes a valuable storytelling opportunity. And it's not necessarily because like, oh, the player or, the DM gets to like operate the player in the way they want, it's like, the DM NPCs always know where the treasure is. They're basically the ones that set it there. It's Squid Games. They're the, they're the game masters.
Yeah, they control everything.
And so it's just nice to kind of give, that opportunity for the player to still feel like they're not just like, all right, be gentle with my character for the session I'm gone.
Been here yet.
And when they get back, they realize they're now, a joke of whatever they're working on or whatever kind of thing, or they've lost all their money or a crazy bet happened.
Up to hell,
there's all kinds of stuff that can happen. But I mean, you would think being the wife of the DM would never miss a session, but
I
have.
I have.
You were not excluded from the rules.
I was not. I had to work that day. I think I was training for a new job, so it was like a thing where I had to go in on a Sunday. It sucked. But I did. I missed a session, and as much as the FOMO was like eating me up.
And the worst part is you got back before the session ended and chose to spend the rest of it in the back so that you didn't have to like interrupt it.
Yeah, because it felt like I would be kind of ruining what you had already established for the session. I wasn't supposed to be there, so me showing up early just because my training got done early doesn't mean I suddenly get to just pop in.
Because we were doing Curse of Strahd at that point, so I think it was like they were dungeon diving and you were taken out, so it would have been like
separated.
It was going to be like, well, hi, I'm here. I teleport. Well, I mean, it's magic, but yeah.
True, but I didn't have that power then.
Yeah, that was the early days where I was still a fresh young DM,
Yeah. So, we worked with it as best we could, but it really... it was interesting to be on that end, on the missing end of a session. But I didn't feel like I completely missed out because I got my own little side adventure. Yep. I got to do a little bit of sleuthing on my own. I found out some things, some pretty important things.
Right, you gained some information, some names and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was able to give the rest of the group a little bit of a leg up, which was nice. And like you said, it gives the player a little bit of the spotlight, makes them feel a little like special for their little comeback.
Well, yeah, you come back, it's like it's better for like your ally to come back with like reward than like, oh, all these enemies are following me, hey guys, what's up, let's fight these now. It's so when it's a hamper, when you're holding people back, you're like, oh, okay, we're all gonna have to tell this person. Now it's like, ooh, what did they learn, what extra shit, because they got to be a part. So there could be anything,
right? And it's not always a good thing. Sometimes the player will mess up in their little adventure and they won't get anything out of it, or they'll get something bad out of it.
That's happened a few times. But the real cool thing, and the reason I wanted to focus on today's episode about this situation is, the character Bricky is a very unique situation in that because of Eric missing the session and it being Bricky, who at this point, unbeknownst to the players, is under kind of a verbal compulsion, kind of brainwashing. Yeah. And one of my characters, Dr. Matthias, is the one who is very much manipulating and has been manipulating behind the strings. So it created this really interesting moment because it's like, oh, well, wait, this is one where in the story, it makes sense for me to take over the character. Like, I can make the character do whatever I want. And it's not just me being the DM, it's Dr. Matthias. And it made it cool. Obviously, I didn't necessarily want to just push that past. I remember kind of shooting it past Eric and being like, hey, what do you think? I want to have a little side with your character. And I just remember saying, like, Dr. Matthias has some words for you. And I just remember being like, okay. And I'm just in my head, I'm like, I know he wants to say more, but he just doesn't want to give me any ideas. And so it was like, all right, cool. And so it was this whole like, okay, this was really, because at this point, we were like a couple days into Arinoka. The story was kind of getting to where the fun stuff was about to be like, oh, the championships. It's like, okay, well, now the curtains are time for the action to happen. And we needed a way to kind of explain it. Plus, at this point in the story, it made even more sense because there was so much suspicion and doubt on Bricky.
Yeah.
So much. I mean, at this point, they don't even know what he is. And then it was like after the shadow thing. And so it's like,
now we think he's in collusion with the Smiley Man.
Yeah. And so, and at this point, too, when the kind of, while he's gone, the story and the session itself, you guys are kind of following behind in Bricky's tracks.
Yeah, sort of picking up the breadcrumbs of his trail.
Right. And so this kind of leads me into kind of what had happened. And it's funny, as the players were trying to kind of find him, had they continued, I kind of had planned for them to run into Bricky, but you guys kind of gave up halfway through.
This is too hard.
But I think it was also based on the fact that it's like, okay, the character's missing. We're gonna just move on. Yeah. And so like the whole thing started with essentially Bricky being forcefully kidnapped, and the problem is that Bricky enters into this kind of like command mode when with Dr. Matthias, and it kind of puts him in a fugue state. Yeah. So he himself is like emotion. He's not recording. He's working with the record buttons off, and so he's moving around, but he's not really knowing what he's doing. Obviously, Dr. Matthias does.
He's like factory settings, Bricky.
And the funny thing is that when I have, this going on, is that, Dr. Matthias is this kind of malicious entity who very much takes sport and pleasure in destroying and hurting and also manipulating things.
Yeah, he's a mean one.
And so when they had stumbled upon, as they were talking, they were occupying a cot of someone else's, property. He took no quick thought into basically, don't want to go into too much details because it's on YouTube, dismembering her.
Oh my.
But it was a moment where obviously he wanted to pin it onto Bricky, so he's making Bricky kind of cover himself in the blood, holding on to her. Aww. Unbeknownst to him, there's kind of this drive where Bricky actually is kind of puts her a little, like, kind of puts her out of her misery, as is there's no way she's going to survive at this point. But it creates, obviously, the image of Bricky's guilt. But in actuality, it was a sign of that, which also kind of gave the player Eric knowing that there was kind of a buffer between the kind of commanding and like a sense of what he was building with the character. So it's like, upon even him kind of probably understanding this happening, he's like, oh shit. Like, and even as the characters found out, Bricky actually didn't kill her. So it was that whole thing where like, okay, there's still maybe a modicum of control in Bricky, and maybe he's now trying to fight that kind of thing. But what we don't really know is obviously is that during the entire evening that he is gone, he has basically spent with this stone that has this kind of weird energy and almanence from which we now, as the story has gone on, we've now known this is a stone from the demon realm. And so it has kind of a connection to that kind of place, right? And so he is required to draw out this like giant sigil across the final, like, or the arena. Because the arena is just a giant sand pit.
During the daytime where everyone's asleep and no one's paying attention.
No, it's all during the night.
Oh.
This was all that night.
Wow.
Because they all sleep during the night. They're beast people.
Okay.
So most of the time, sun up, sun down. I mean, there's some, but the grounds themselves aren't really occupied, right? So like because the tournaments all happen in the day, and then everyone goes back into the inner and outer rings. But this whole thing is that, you know, what I love, and I don't necessarily reveal now, but this entire time. And it'll be interesting to see, and as I speak, obviously, you know, spoilers and stuff, but the whole time Matthias is just telling everything to Bricky of the grand plan, which means there is kind of a record in there if the players were to ever find out a way to release that, in that this whole time that like Bricky spends like 8 hours of like scracking in, this kind of figure is just kind of eating popcorn and essentially going over the details in very kind of typical plan about what's going on.
Gotcha.
But the whole time it's kind of this funny thing because it's like I'm the only one really getting this scene at the end of the day, because all this information never comes out, which is kind of funny to be able to say it, because it's really just the side theme that our story that I created, because the players never investigated enough or got to investigate this whole thing going down.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? Like, you know, you guys acquired the stone, but you know, you don't really know what it's for or its purpose, besides that it's, you know, scary, and when it does bad things.
And we left it with Bricky.
Well, now it's in a different place.
It's with someone else.
But it's that thing where it was, you know, there was this side story, but because the player enters this fugue state, it occurred without the player being informed. So this whole scene is just this funny thing where I remember, I haven't even told you about this, where it's kind of the first time, and we've been going for over a year now. And so that whole scene, the side scene, is developed the world, developed the story. And in reality, the players never really knew what happened, though they were involved.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of funny. So it is kind of that weird, like, you know, side stories can help the story even if you're not having the players necessarily be involved.
Yeah.
And that's why I thought this was such a kind of interesting moment in our campaign, because one, it was the first, and we haven't quite had a moment yet because my players tend not to miss. If anything, I'm the one that gets sick or whatnot.
Yeah.
But with that, it's just like, you know, it shows such unique opportunities to both the player and the DM to move the story along without it necessarily feeling like both railroading or the player necessarily losing agency.
Yeah, it creates this really nice opportunity for suspense without the DM having to make that suspense, which is really nice.
Yeah, because my whole point of this whole subplot was just, at the end of the day, was just to cause more suspicion on Bricky.
Yeah.
I was loving that the party was just all about, like, what's going on. But really the reason is because the party freaking glossed over this, like, incessant need of Bricky to be with, like, Bogbean, and nobody questions it.
Nope.
Nobody fucking questions it.
Yeah.
And so it's like the whole time, but then they're like, oh, it's so suspicious, but nobody asks the right questions.
Yeah.
So it's kind of me going like, okay, let me help out a little, but I'm not going to actually make him do it because that's messed up.
Yeah.
But I'm going to make it seem like he did. And because he's a fugue, I'm not going to tell him that he didn't do it or did do it.
So the player thought he did it.
I mean, I imagine we'll have to ask him after the interview, you know, but I imagine he kind of for a split second maybe thought so.
Right,
but, you know, it is probably kind of interesting for him to see what his perspective is, knowing that, you know, for sure he wasn't the murderer.
I'd love to find out.
But the bigger thing, too, was I felt like that allowed me the opportunity to put Matthias back into the story. This was really, I think, the setting of the kind of marker of, you know, he's this, you know, the bad smiley man. He's like the boogeyman in everyone's story. And it's one thing when it's like, okay, well, we're not going to see the boogeyman until like level 15. I mean, come on, like the end game. But to have kind of this kind of overarching villain that's just always around and always seems to be one step ahead, and being able to also like allow a player to be like, put into a position where it's like, do you work for the bad guy? Like, what is this crap?
Yeah,
like, what is going on? Whose side are you on? I think it also became the point with, like, you know, if he was like recording people, like if anybody could hear what he was seeing or saying. So then it's like, people are just like, all right, you look that way. You know, it's like trying to keep it, because it was like so much suspicion. But I kind of wanted that in the characters, because that way, you know, I think it built more up into it. Because if not, I don't think the party may have dug deep enough as the story progressed to find out more about kind of what is affecting Bricky.
Right. I think we were all a little on edge, because obviously this is our first homebrew campaign. We all created these like really intricate backstories, some of us. So we didn't want to let too much go too early. And so we were all kind of worried to start revealing too much too quickly. And that might have been the hamper we had.
Right, yeah. And the other thing, too, that I like, too, is that this was right before, essentially, you guys were supposed to fight each other. And I think that was the other reason where I was like, ooh, I want to make it work. Maybe it was more of like, maybe they'll go a little harder on each other, because now it's like, ooh, maybe Bricky is the bad guy, so they're going to like attack him or something. So that was kind of interesting to see if maybe that was going to be potentially an action that would happen.
So, actually, yeah.
But I mean, if you're ever interested in Traveler's Chronicles, please join us on our Discord, because that's where we have a lot of the updates, a lot of the kind of questionnaires. If you have any questions, or if you have any kind of, maybe might know if you've been listening to Traveler's Chronicles, what's coming up with Matthias's plan, but I royally doubt it, because I don't think anyone saw what was going to happen.
Oh, but you can speculate in the comments.
But we always love, if you ever want to talk to any of the travelers, they're always on there. They even have their monikers of their players as their names. So you can always, if you ever want to ask them what they were thinking, you can always just ask them directly on our Discord.
Right.
But as always, like we said, we best get the information from the people who are responsible for all of this. And I think it's best to hit on the ground floor with our reporter, Luna, down on Extraeus. I think she's still over there. I mean, hopefully she's located Bricky after all this.
Luna, can you hear us? Welcome to Traveler's Chronicles. I'm your host, Luna. I'm here with Bricky, who has been missing for the last couple days. We're wondering, all of us here, where have you been? You've returned covered in dirt. You're covered in other things, and you, frankly, you smell even worse than when you left. So, explain to us, where have you been?
Guten Tag, Luna. Well, ich weiß es nicht. I do not know where I was. I woke up in the... I don't even know what they are, but they looked like large elephants.
Oh, the Tuscari?
Yeah, in their tent. And now I've made it back here, but where's Bark been?
Well, actually, we're having a little bit of trouble locating her at the moment, but actually, you're the person in question at the moment. See, we are very concerned because we're trying to find where she is, but you've been missing for the last few days. She's only gone off to try and find you just recently. But can you tell us anything about where you've been? Do you remember anything at all?
Nein, I don't know what happened. The filth, I do not know why I'm like this. I just keep thinking Zicke und zusammen.
What does that mean?
Safe und together, yeah.
Oh, I see. Well, that is a lovely sentiment in this strange time. I'm very saddened to hear that you are suffering from what seems to be amnesia at the moment. Sad and just a tad convenient, if I might add. But we're going to skip over that now, since you don't seem to remember anything that happened. Can you tell us a little bit about how you're feeling right now? I see you're covered in a sort of bit of blood.
That is felt concerning to me. Yeah, I don't know why there's blood all over me. I hope it's for a good reason. I don't exactly know what a good reason would be in this case. I'm just concerned for myself as well as the safety of others as Bogbean is missing.
Well, I'm pretty sure it's not your blood, because we know you bleed black. So
yeah,
it's not you, but I'm really worried for who it might be. Another thing, why are you... you are clearly in a terrible state. Why are you so concerned with where Bogbean is, considering what you've been through?
She has to be safe.
Oh, can you elaborate on that a little bit? Why does she have to be safe? I mean, don't get me wrong, I hope everyone is safe, but why specifically Bogbean?
Sie gehören zusammen. Safe und together, yeah.
Oh, is this feeling only towards Bogbean, or do you feel that way towards some of us?
Ich weiß es nicht, I do not know.
Oh, I see. Well, that's a little cold, but hopefully we can become good friends in the future. I hope, anyway. If you don't turn out to be some sort of a very evil person, but I see that you brought Miguel back with you. That's quite strange, considering how you have certainly made your feelings quite well known about him. Why did you bring him back?
Well, I didn't really have a choice. He told me that I had to.
He?
Yeah, Miguel.
Oh, Miguel told you that you had to, and you follow Miguel's orders. Is this? Are you his? Do you belong to him now?
Nein, I do not belong to him.
Oh, well, then why do you follow him so blindly like that? I'm pretty sure I remember when we first met you, you were not very keen on Mr. Miguel.
I cannot say, Luna. I just have to follow what Miguel says.
You can't or won't.
Is there truly a distinction, yeah?
Yes, there is, because one is involuntary, and the other one is very much a choice.
Well, ich weiß es nicht, mein Freund.
You don't know. Interesting. Well, we shall see. I will let you go for now with your caginess towards my questions.
Bricky, bring me food!
Clump, clump, clump.
Oh dear. Well, I see. We'll leave him to his chores, I suppose. But I'd like to move over to Eric at least. Eric, you've deigned to join us now that Bricky has plopped off somewhere. But can you give us a little bit of insight as to how you felt with Bricky's absence?
Well, it's nice to be done feeding that little kobold because he's a royal pain in my butt. No, but it was definitely a bit of a shocking experience to finally get back and go into this completely blind, as our dungeon master has put it. So I was a little worried on what was going to happen. And having Bricky wake up in the situation and then immediately get thrown back to the party, but in such a at least semi-humiliating way. It was...
True.
It was, it didn't quite feel like punishment, but it was like, I earned it.
It was a little bit earned, yes. Well, I'd also like to ask, you came back, but you were gone, and not just gone in the session, but you were gone in person as well. How did that feel, missing out? I know you're one of our most dedicated and enthusiastic players, so how did that work out for you? How did you feel?
It sucked.
Is the FOMO real?
Oh, the FOMO was 1,000% real. I definitely really didn't want to miss the session, but when you have a family and everything else, life gets in the way.
Absolutely.
And sacrifices have to be made.
D&D is an easy choice to remove if something dire is happening in the family.
It is not an easy choice, but it is the choice that we must make.
right.
Especially if we want to keep living with our significant others.
Oh, very true, very true. The spouse would not appreciate you sacrificing them for D&D.
No, absolutely not.
I'd also like to ask how you felt about what was revealed about Bricky and how much that added to the depth of his character. It really revealed a lot to us, not just what you said, but what you didn't say.
Oh, yeah. Well, that did get revealed to me a bit later, but with all of the caveats with... how he was in the tent with Matthias, the aspect where originally I did think that he had killed the woman that was in there, as it very much looked like it, but then to find that he'd actually tried to resist at the very least, as well as just all the devious aspects on the side. Doing some runes and stuff in the sand, covering it up. No one's gonna know it's here. It's great. Definitely added to the story. Definitely made me feel that I hadn't truly missed the session, even though all that information did come at a much later date. But it was good to finally pick up the breadcrumbs and
it filled in some gaps.
Oh, it filled in a lot of gaps. But it was also good to just. it was setting the scene. Basically, it's like, well, why did Bricky leave? Like normally, as it's been mentioned before, seems at least semi-attached to the party, but mostly he seems attached to Bogbean for one reason or another.
Specifically, yeah.
And it's like, hey, why is that? Because it's like, why would he leave? Bogbean's right here.
Right. Why would he ever go away from the one person he's been so obsessed over? That is true. That is a very good question that we may or may not have asked as your party. But that's good to know. It really gave, I think, Bricky some depth for us, especially as a person with emotions and feelings, drives and motivations. It really kind of gave Bricky more like, it gave him more personality.
It made him more three-dimensional.
Yes, exactly.
Because, yeah, he had some depth before, but he's this macabre individual where you guys didn't entirely know what he was, where he's from. Like, sure, there'd been the breadcrumbs and some of the information he'd been able to give you, but you don't know everything about it, so this is just another layer on top of this.
Absolutely. And can you tell us a little bit about how that little subplot that you were able to work through, how that created tension in anticipating for arrival, like your return to the table?
Well, it was very interesting to just hand the reins over to our DM because, yeah, he'd messaged me before, but it was very concerning. It's like, oh no, what's he gonna do? What will I have done, or what will I have not done? It's
the anxiety is real.
The anxiety was absolutely real, but thankfully there is a lot of trust at this table, so it was like, okay, it's gonna be okay.
Right. I'll be in good hands, I promise.
I hope.
I hope. Well, that's good, and we're glad that you trusted the DM. I think it created a much richer story that way.
Oh yeah,
absolutely. But you do happen to be a DM in your own right. You do have your own tables, and how have you handled absences from your own tables?
Normally, when it comes to absences, it's very dependent on the campaign. True. Some of the more open campaigns where I've had people cycling through regularly, it was more of like, hey, like at the most recent town, this person's going off to do an errand. You guys are picking up someone else who's like going to the next set of towns, or they have a mission that's adjacent to yours. So it makes it easy to just cycle people through.
Okay.
For the more dedicated campaigns, it's kind of hard sometimes because if you're especially dealing with a smaller table, you have to you either have to cancel the session, unfortunately, or you have to get creative, whether it's some type of dream daywalk kind of thing, or even having the big bad evil guy abduct them,
right?
And
a little bit of an interruption.
Yeah, like something that will pivot the player's attention enough so that they take care of stuff in the meantime, especially if the story was at, per se, a pivotal moment and you needed everyone there.
Right, and then you can come back to the story later.
Yeah, but I do think that player absence can absolutely spice up a D&D table, and actually having just started DMing another table recently in the last month, I'm hoping that I don't have to deal with it, but if I do, it should be pretty fun and easy, because this is a H.P. Lovecraft inspired campaign. So it's,
disappearances are well within the norm.
It's going to be people are going to be disappearing in this campaign
very
for
good,
sure,
very
whether
good.
they're there or not.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Eric. I really loved interviewing you. This has been Luna with Traveler Tidings. Thank you so much for joining me today. Now back to you, DNDWife and DM Eguile.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Luna. That was always fun to hear from the ground floor.
Oh, yeah.
But as always, we're starting with this new year. We're starting with a new program where now we're going to sit down with a round table. Eric joining us now to kind of get an opportunity to discuss between players and the Dungeon Master any of the other little fine details about what had happened in this story. So, I mean, Eric, this is your opportunity.
Give your
If
perspective.
you have any questions or anything you want to ask me about what actually happened, you have a bit of time, because I know you would take all the time you could.
Oh yeah. Well, hey, it's always fun to ask the Dungeon Master, the backstory behind things, because it doesn't always get well explained in high detail. One of the things that always made me question what was going on, especially since prior to Bricky's air quotes abduction / I swear I'm not doing anything bad, guys.
Yeah.
When he went off, he'd actually been damaged in one of the previous fights, and he was still dealing with some of those consequences, as well as from their encounter with the Mr. Peepers, since no one in the party yet had really figured out, at least well enough, that what it takes to keep Bricky running.
Yeah.
why did you decide the female leg replacement for Bricky, which was so much fun. Like, being able to flaunt that along is like, well, hello, boys. Look who's got the new look.
There's a multifaceted layer to this in that I had just seen a short from Christmas Story with the leg lamp.
Oh.
And so it was in my head.
Okay.
And so then...
That is a great movie.
When it was essentially, too, at that point, I remember being like, okay, essentially, I have to take Bricky in for repairs. Yeah. Because nobody, at this point, we're running into that problem that we knew we were going to run into the early game of, like, crap, undead character, not really easy to heal. This is going to be an issue. So it was like, okay, I got to call him in for repairs. But I'm like, nobody gets anything for free. I got to give you something. And I just thought, like, leaving you with one, like, feminine, like, hyper feminine leg was just going to be freaking hilarious.
It was honestly great.
Then the thought was it was a Hume leg. So then it was just like, I also got the whole, like, they're going to be like, where did you get that?
Right.
Like, it's pristine. Like, was it in a briefcase or something? Like, did someone just have it ready to go?
An ice spell constantly
Where's its
going?
pair?
Yeah.
I thought maybe someone would joke about finding you, like, and actually making them both lady legs.
Was it wearing high heels and fishnet stockings?
No, but it was a big, like, because he's tall.
He needs a big
So, like,
leg.
it's a big old lady leg.
Yeah. Ooh.
He could have stopped, like, caravans by just pulling up his pant leg.
I was actually half tempted just to rip his pants on that one side for the fun.
Go LL Cool J, just roll it up on one side. Yeah, so, I mean, it was more of, like, it was just kind of, with being the, like, Stitch character that can be all the different pieces. And we had done it, I think, later on where, like, your hands got sewn on backwards.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so it was just I think that kind of comedy is just so good when you have, like, the undead character that I wanted to also lean into it. Where it's like, dude, this is also, like, as much as it's, like, macabre and, like, oh, no, it's scary. You can be like, yeah, it's also hilarious, too.
I think it does help that Bricky's, he, for the most part, he's a very happy individual. So it's not just depression and sadness all the time. He's like, oh, it's okay, y'all. So these hands are not on the right way.
He just work with it.
And
then the other thing I wanted on that one was the fact that I also wanted the kind of suspicion of, like, because you had joked about, like, oh, I could take any parts. And so I wanted the players also to start being like, is this guy going to, like, cut off a piece of me? And then you started kind of joking about it in the sessions. And I'm like, oh, it's perfect. It's perfect. Because it was already, there was kind of eyes of, like, okay, he says he needs a new foot, and it was, I think the question was whether or not, like, mirroring things would work for you, and then when they found out it did, it was like, okay.
We're gonna get you some pause.
Yeah, it was just more of, like, at first it was like, cool, what can we do? And then I think other characters started thinking, okay, I don't want to lose a piece of me to help Bricky.
Just to help Bricky.
Yeah, why does Bricky keep saying everyone around him is important?
Right, like, everyone's got spare parts.
Yeah. But I have a bit of a question.
What's up?
How do you balance, like, using a character in their player's absence? Because that's a little tough without stepping on their toes either. Because it's our baby.
I mean, for me, it's usually the biggest thing that I'll do is they will be in a plot line that's untouched. That's usually what ends up happening. So it's like, so in this case, you guys really didn't know that Matthias was around.
No.
Like, I mean, Bricky does, because Bricky has kind of like sonar ping.
He wasn't telling us, though.
Yeah.
But the funny thing, okay, back to yours. The only reason this triggered, though, is because Shad existed.
That's right.
Because when Shad existed, he was no longer low-jacked.
Gotcha.
And because he wasn't low-jacked,
Matthias got freaked out.
Well, just came to check on him. And so that's what started it. And so then it was like, okay, well, I knew he was going to avoid it like the plague.
Yeah.
Like, Eric's not going to walk into the devil's trap.
No.
Like, that's dumb. But it was like, oh, okay, he's not here. Well, now he can't avoid it.
Yeah.
So then it's like, okay, cool. But at the same time, again, I also am not going to take over a player's agency. Like, if Bricky was, like, crushing skulls and killing things, then, he would have killed that lady. Hands down.
Yeah.
Hands down.
If that was his personality before.
But he very much was portraying, like, trying to not be a part of that. And would, even though he, like, life and death is very subjective to him,
Bricky,
which was still a thing, it was more of, like, he's not going to let somebody suffer.
No.
Like, he couldn't stop it, but he at least made her not, like, sit there and bleed out.
I think that's the biggest tell, right? He's not a psycho. He has emotions. He cares cares about people. He doesn't want to see them, hurt any more than they have to.
So I know, now this is for you, Eric. I know this is, we started talking, I think on the last time we had you here, was about this kind of verbal component. I think this is the first time it's become center stage. I mean, how do you, I really appreciate, because knowing where we are now in the story, it's only now been actually like put forth. I really got to hand to you for not just being like, texting someone on the side, hey, yo, just say this to me and let's get this shit out of the way. Because this started becoming where I was using it against you.
Oh, I know.
Especially when I put Miguel being your boss.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, Miguel didn't know how it worked, but Matthias had told him, just do this.
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah.
Right? It's like the worst thing you can do.
Yeah.
But it's that thing where it's like, I always appreciated the fact that you rolled with it. And then, because at first, I think it was funny because at first the players are just like, whatever, we'll figure it out. It's a code word or whatever. But only really one kind of figured it without directly knowing it about it. Needed to first start with the language, because it was like finding out when it was didn't fucking matter.
Yeah.
You had to know the language.
But see, that was the important part for me, because I knew, even with the system that I was putting into place, which it was like, okay, there's some big risks here. I really decided early on, it's like, okay, it can't just be freaking generic for like anyone, because just casual conversation, it might come up and that will screw it up. It would make so much more sense if it was limited to the language, but only the language of the Undabarians.
Right, and that's why it made the most. And then it was also like, you had to know the language. Yes. It's not just like, oh, I can write some Spanish for you, or you can write some Spanish for me. I could say it. I'll probably butcher it, but I don't know the words. I can say them, but you have to know the meaning, because in a previous campaign, we started to do like word kind of magic, but I kind of was like, that's too much stuff.
Yeah.
So it was kind of more interesting to then employ it in this aspect for more of a singular focus.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was the only one in the party that knew the language, which I'm occasionally throwing in as German for the party.
Yeah, which gives it that spin, because everyone's got like a little twist to their character.
And we did end up learning like a few of Bricky's like signiture
but no one really knows what they actually mean. It's just like, it's basically parroting.
Yeah. Well, like we know like ich weiß es nicht. We know that one means I don't know.
It's at that point it was his most common phrase, because Luna especially would always ask him things.
What is that?
But you would always ask at least part, or like a huge piece of what he wasn't allowed to talk about at the time, regardless, because Matthias is mean.
So
he just has to, like, if he has to say something, he can say, I don't know.
Yeah.
Which was so many things. It's like, I swear, if you just asked this slightly differently, I could say something, but you
phrasing.
The phrasing is so important, so I couldn't say anything.
And it was funny too, because like I remember being like, I'm always trying to like, coming off of a high level campaign and then going to low. It's like, I'm like, okay, you're in a fugue state. No, man. I'm like, wait, these guys can't read minds or anything yet. Like he just doesn't know. Like, because like before I had to be like, okay, I got to make sure all the little hidden nooks, box crannies, little side stories, little caveats, close. But it was just nice, because I felt like always creating the enemy within is easy to do with a DM NPC. Like, they're the outsider. Like, it's they're not here.
Of course they are.
They're not here at the table.
Yeah.
But I think it really played in with the preference that we have evil players. Not everyone knows who the evil players are. So, but it was told you could be anything. So when it's like Bricky playing this back and forth joke, but then the side story suddenly takes him to where it's not so much a joke anymore.
Yeah, we all started wondering if the persona was just a persona, or if he's actually like...
Yeah, the facade has been lifted. But I mean, not everything there was entirely a joke, because, sure, he was mentioning, it's like, oh, well, I would love to have some new components, like, all those things. It's like, he was looking, because he's damaged, and sure, Bogbeam would do a good job of sewing him back together, but there's only so much he could take.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I know it's bad to say, but at the very beginning, I had mentioned it to John initially, that it's like, hey, depending on how things go, this could almost be a throwaway character, because if they can't fix him and things go bad, he's basically going to be out of power.
Yeah, really, it did come down, especially with starting at level 1 and also making it a slow grind.
Yeah,
that was, and I think it was in like the first fight, you did take quite a bit of damage, and it was just like, we
might be in trouble.
And it, but I think it worked out well. And I think it's created so much depth to the character, and it just shows like, you know, as much as I don't want to say, it's like, man, you know, maybe if people missed more sessions, we'd get more character depth. But that's a terrible thing to say in the long run.
Yeah, we don't want people missing sessions.
It would be sad because sometimes you don't realize how much you like certain characters in Tova Gran.
Yeah, that's true.
Very
And
much
so,
so.
you know, it's really interesting, you know, where we can just see how like this little bit of side story of Bricky, I think, opened up a lot more, and especially with what's to come in that storyline, because they're suspicious of him now.
Yeah.
But when they get to the finals and when the curtain is drawn, there is a lot more suspicion that gets thrown out.
it's just-
Because
yeah.
at that moment, that is the pivotal moment that's coming up, is the kind of reveal that there is kind of this direct control.
A little bit of nefariousness
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah, you made me an enemy of the party. You
I
did,
did,
a great
and it was
job.
great.
It was
But
awesome.
at the same time, nobody attacked you, so I didn't do that great of a job.
That's
Well,
true.
okay. I feel that without giving too much away, it's I think the one good friend that Bricky has that he can rely on is like one of the main reasons that the party didn't turn on him.
Yeah, when you got the cute little cuddly teddy bear on your side, you know, talking baby talk, trying to keep you alive, it's probably a good idea.
Yeah, smart.
Although you were even testing her friendship too, so I was like
yeah.
sitting there, it's like, don't you do
That
this
was,
to me.
you know, that was the one where it was interesting, because that was the like, because obviously we talked about this, we paired our veterans with our newbies, and that was the one where it's like, oh, okay, so where this goes could change a lot, and it kind of was, but it because of the way Bogbean was played and the interactions that followed, it never got to that point where it's like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
It's like I think she just decided at the end to trust her friend, to realize that like maybe something else is going on, because for all of the kindness that he done, why would he randomly do this?
I think we like grilled you for like a good part of the session trying to figure it out.
We does not rhyme with Luna.
Yeah, I mean,
Luna grilled
Luna
you.
did kind of give him the third degree.
I needed to know that you could be trustworthy, and I think that went a long way towards proving like maybe he's not in control of, like, maybe sure he might be doing some bad stuff, but maybe he's not doing it on purpose.
Yeah, because I mean, without revealing too much, I think that was also the moment where, with some of the questioning, I was actually able to answer you, and I was explaining to you that I couldn't hurt Bogbean.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was impossible.
Yeah.
And it explained, also with Miguel too, with that, why
he was
you know.
included, but that only happened recently, so we kind of had to start piecing the little clues together. It was
Right.
nice.
I mean, there's still so much more, obviously, and as we said, it's just kind of the small, kind of the lighting of the powder keg that will be probably the next couple of episodes of Traveler's Chronicles, because a lot more happens. We got, Bogbean going into training, that's why she wasn't around, and all kinds of stuff. So there's a lot of cool moments coming up, but the grand kind of reveal of the big thing, and what I called kind of the actual starting of the story is coming up, which was, I think, a very pivotal moment in our campaign, because I think it's set where it was like, okay, this is not going to be a normal campaign, and nothing is safe.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that was really what I wanted to set up in the
It really
the
drove it
prologue tutorial section that we had set up for it.
Is coming to a close.
But that wraps up this episode of the Traveler's Chronicles. Thank you again for joining us as we unraveled the mystery of Bricky's disappearance. We hoped you enjoyed the twists and turns and the deeper dive into our campaign's world.
Don't forget to follow us wherever you listen to podcasts, leave a 5-star review, and share the show with your fellow adventurers. And hey, join our Discord community to discuss your theories, share your fan art, and connect with other fans of Extraeus.
And once again, Eric, thank you for joining us for the round table and your
Thank you so
interview.
much.
It's always nice to have people from the table kind of give their perspective and ask questions and get an opportunity to get a little bit more into the story.
Oh, thank you very much. It was an absolute pleasure to be here.
So once again, on our next episode, we'll be diving in. That is so hard to say tonight. Into the solo adventure of Bogbean as she learns more about her own past and the weapon she has been carrying the whole time. But until then, adventurers, keep rolling those 20s.
And don't let the demons bite. Bye.
Thank you, listeners, for joining us on this episode of the Traveler Chronicles. We hope you enjoyed your journey through the world of Extraeus and the adventures of the travelers themselves. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, share, and subscribe to our podcast. Your support helps us continue to bring the magic of Extraeus to life. Want to be part of the story? Join our community on Discord, where you can chat with us and the travelers themselves. share your own adventures, and dive even deeper into the world of Extraeus. Don't forget to check out our videos on the Couple of Nerds YouTube page for even more content, including behind-the-scenes looks, painting tutorials by DNDWife, and so much more. Thank you for being a part of our adventure. So keep rolling those dice, and may your journeys be filled with wonder and excitement. Till next time, on the next episode of the Traveler Chronicles.